بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. So my dear brothers and sisters and respected elders and mashayikh, today we're going to be talking about the enemy within, because in reality one of the greatest enemies is the inner me. And this is very important to talk about because we live in a kind of materialistic, individualistic, utilitarian society where everything is quantified, especially in a kind of materialistic and capitalistic sense. It's all about numbers. It's all about quantity. But the Islamic tradition is very qualitative. It's based on quality. It's based on ihsan. It's based on the weight of your deeds and not necessarily counting your deeds. And we all know this, and just to remind each other that in order for an act of worship to be accepted, that act of worship has to be in line with the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this is significant for today's topic, it has to have the right intention. It has to have essentially ikhlas, that you're doing it for the sake of Allah. So your deeds to be accepted are fundamentally based upon something that you cannot necessarily see with the naked eye. Your deeds to be accepted is essentially based upon, at least if you want to quantify it, 50% if you like, or a central aspect is that it's in the heart, because ikhlas is not in, it's not on your face, it's not something that you can necessarily see. Ikhlas is in your heart. Your intention and also ikhlas is in your qalb. And this is why it's very significant, because you're at the masjid, you're praying salah, maybe you did some dhikr today, maybe you shook someone's hand and you smiled, maybe you did da'wah, and all of these things which are great on the surface, but if they don't have the right intention, you don't have ikhlas, then they're meaningless, frankly. They're absolutely meaningless. And this is why focusing on the heart is very, very important. Allah makes this very clear in the Quran. Allah says that you're not going to be safe on the Day of Judgment unless you come to Allah with a sound heart. Qalbin salim, a sound heart. Also, there's only one place in the Quran where Allah makes 11 oaths consecutively. Allah swears 11 times, only for one topic. There is no other place in the Quran, no other place in the book of Allah where Allah makes 11 consecutive oaths for one topic. Who knows where this is?
Tell them. It was in the family halaqah last week, so they better know it.
It was in your family halaqah last week, so you better know it.
Yeah.
Yes, brother. Sure, Shams. Absolutely. Because Allah is making all of these oaths, and then He says, the one who purifies themselves succeeds. Now, nafs, qalb, and all of these things are kind of synonyms and interchangeable theologically. The point here is, look at the emphasis and the significance and the kind of linguistic strategy that Allah employs in order us to realize that one of the most significant things we can be talking about, acting upon, internalizing and practicing is actually tazkiyatun nafs, purifying our souls or purifying our hearts. Is this clear so far? This is fundamental. You can have 500,000 shahadas a year. You can give millions of dollars in sadaqah. You can build 500 masajid in Ontario, and you could go straight to hell. You could go straight to Jahannam. Because your heart wasn't purified. Your heart had maybe kibr, or it had riya, ostentation. You didn't do good deeds for the sake of Allah. You did it for the sake of fame. You did it for the sake of glory. You did it for the sake of other people. You did it for the sake of people's reaction. You did it for accolades. You did it for dunya-centric reasons, not Allah-centric reasons. And you could have all of these deeds and you end up in Jahannam. This is actually significant. That's why many ulama, they say the number one obligation for the Muslim is to deal with the internal before they deal with the external. Now we don't make this kind of dichotomy because they're both kind of connected. But if you were to emphasize on anything, try and work on the internal. Because Allah weighs your deeds. He doesn't necessarily count them. And this is so important, my dear brothers and sisters. So we have a Quranic, emphatic set of verses. One, that you're not going to be safe on the Day of Judgment unless you come to Allah with a sound heart. The other one is emphatic from the point of view of making consecutive oaths 11 times for only one topic, which is purification of the soul. So what I want to do today is to try and empower you so you can continue your spiritual journey in order for you to reach the optimal version of who you can be. Now I want to make a caveat. I am not a scholar. I'm just a microphone. So I've learnt this from a scholar or from scholars. And this is just the beginning, it is not the end. Going through this in about 30 minutes is not going to be satisfactory. This is a lifelong jihad. It's a lifelong struggle. The goal of today is to give you a framework to plant the seed in your heart and mind so you can continue your life, your da'wah, your leadership, your family leadership, and all types of leadership. Because the Prophet ﷺ said that every Muslim is a shepherd. Every one of you is a shepherd. Kullukum ra'in. Everyone is a shepherd, from the male to the female, to the boss, to the leader, to the servant. You're all shepherds. You all have leadership. And we're going to unpack this as well when we're going through the spiritual diseases of the heart. So when we're talking about the heart, we're referring to something called the qalb. Now in the Islamic tradition, the qalb does taqallub. It wavers. It's always wavering. Okay? It's always wavering. And the qalb has fitan, tribulations. What are these tribulations? Shahawat and shubuhat. Meaning blameworthy desires and destructive doubts. Not only does the heart have shahawat and shubuhat, but it also has diseases. Now there are many diseases of the heart. The ulama have tried to codify this in some way, and many ulama, not all of them, because there is ikhtilaf on these issues, but many of the ulama said there are 4 main spiritual diseases, and all the other spiritual diseases come from these 4 spiritual diseases. Okay? And the 4 are as follows. And you could read this from the works from Ibn Taymiyyah to Al-Ghazali and many others. May Allah have mercy on them.
Ameen.
So you have, for example, the first one, which is known as kibr. Many know kibr to be arrogance. But what is arrogance in the Islamic tradition? According to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, arrogance is to reject the haqq, to reject the truth, and think that you're better than others. And this was very significant because the Prophet ﷺ says in the beginning of this hadith that if you have a seed of arrogance in your heart, you're not going to Jannah. And then one Sahabi said that he likes nice clothes, and the Prophet ﷺ said that Allah is beautiful and He loves beauty, and explained that arrogance is rejecting the truth and thinking you're better than others. It is no wonder Hassan al-Basri would say, like when a Muslim leaves their house, he should actually believe that everyone is better than them. Now this is not a way to belittle your esteem or to have no self-esteem, but it's actually quite theological and spiritual. And you should actually believe this, to be honest. That the minute you walk out your side of your home, every Muslim is better than you. Why? There's a few reasons. One reason is this, that you know your sins because you committed them. You have that internal conscious, subjective experience of the sins that you committed. You don't know anyone else's sins, right? Not only that, you have to have husn al-dhan for people. You have to have a good opinion. You have to give people the benefit of the doubt. Given the fact that you have a good opinion of them and you don't know their sins, but you know your sins, by default, they're better than you. Khalas. And this is very important. This is like the way of the Salaf, the way of the pious predecessors. And therefore, even if you have that perspective, imagine how you're going to be speaking to people now. And we're going to unpack that in a few moments. So I'm going to just describe the diseases, then give some solutions. So that's kibr, arrogance. And this is very important for leadership as well, by the way. Because one of the principles of Islamic leadership, or shepherd leadership, or love service leadership, which is the leadership of the Prophet ﷺ, is that you try to subjugate your ego or your arrogance as much as possible. For two main reasons. Number one, your vision has to be Allah-centric and Akhirah-centric. Meaning it has to be pleasing to Allah, and it's going to be the vehicle that takes you to Jannah. So it can't be anything to do with the ego or fame or wealth or glory or accolades. And that means you have to subjugate your ego in order to ensure that the vision becomes a reality. There's going to be things that you're going to do, say, act that are going to be totally against your initial intuitions or initial desires about what you want to achieve personally. But because you're connected to the Allah-centric, Akhirah-centric vision, you're going to subjugate your ego in order to do what is necessary to achieve that, even if that means you stepping back. Because true leaders are not always in the front. Like if you look at the shepherd, sometimes the shepherd's in the middle. Sometimes the shepherd is in the back. Sometimes the shepherd has to lead in the front. Sometimes the shepherd's not even there. He's gone to pick up the lost sheep to bring them back. Sometimes the shepherd is on the hill just leaning on his shepherd stick. You do what is necessary for the sake of Allah, for the vision, not for your ego. People think that leadership is like, look, I'm the CEO, co-founder. Wallahi, take it. I don't want it anymore. Leadership is one of the most painful things in the world. If you're not in pain, you're not leading. Wallah, I believe this. You're just arrogant, you're a fool, you're not a real leader, you're just a glorified administrator. That's it. If you're a real leader, you have to be in pain every day. Why? Because a real leader is committed to the well-being of all of his people. Committed to the spiritual well-being, to the physical well-being, to the social well-being, to their guidance. And they're humble enough and they've subjugated the ego enough or the arrogance to actually be committed to them in that way and to act in accordance to that. That's painful because you're always worried. So ego arrogance is connected to this. That's the first reason. The second reason is, which is actually connected to what I just said, is that you have to subjugate your ego to want people to be better than you. You have to subjugate your ego in order for them to be optimal versions of themselves. You have to relate to people in a particular way that creates the best version of them. I call this, how you relate is what you create. And you have to be kind of egoless, not totally egoless, but you have to diminish your ego as much as possible to get optimal versions from people.
How you relate is what?
How you relate is what you create. For example, if I'm relating with this brother, and I really believe there's an optimal version of this brother. You know, he has some blind spots, but I'm thinking if I unveil them, something is going to grow. There is a great person, a greater person in that person, if you like. So the way I'm going to speak to him through my linguistic utterances and my body language is such that I believe he is already that person, and from that you're going to get that person. This is a prophetic approach. The Prophet ﷺ did this with so many people. Take for example Fudala ibn Umar, who became Muslim nominally and he wanted to kill the Prophet ﷺ. And he was circumambulating the Kaaba. And the Prophet ﷺ noticed something and he said, what are you whispering to yourself? And to cut long story short, the Prophet ﷺ put his hand on his heart, body language, said, ask Allah to forgive you. And what does Fudala ibn Umar say after this? After that moment, no one was more beloved to me than the Prophet ﷺ. We know this, the famous hadith, which is a hadith of hilm, a hadith of forbearance. Right? Because what does Allah say in Surah Fussilat? chapter 41, verse 33 and 34, and is connected to da'wah as well, by the way. And who is better in speech than the one who calls to Allah, does righteousness, and says, indeed, I am one of those who submit. That's verse 33. Straight away, verse 34, good and evil are not the same. Repelled by that which is better. And between two people there's any hatred, it will turn to intimate friendship. This is very difficult except for the patient. Allahu Akbar. This is hilm, this is forbearance. If you look at the Mufassirin, they say that repelling by that which is better is repelling anything by that which is more beautiful and virtuous. That doesn't mean always being nice, by the way. Because sometimes there's virtue in being harsh or being assertive. But you have to assess the context. And what's interesting in this ayah, Allah doesn't mention evil, by the way. Allah says repel by that which is better. It's like almost a form of ellipsis. The ulama say this means that repel anything by that which is better. And this requires some form of subjugation of the ego. And hilm was a key characteristic, forbearance was a key characteristic of the Prophet ﷺ. And we know the famous hadith of the Jewish man who came to the Prophet ﷺ and pulled him by the collar, left a mark, the Sahabi wanted to kill him or saw him out. And the way the Prophet ﷺ responded was that of virtue and forbearance. And the Jewish man became a Muslim because he was waiting for 3 signs. He saw 2 of the signs, and this was one of the final signs, which was repelling by that which is better. And you need that for leadership. And therefore you have to work on your arrogance and your ego. Okay, so that's kibr. The other spiritual disease is hasad. This one is well known. Brothers, sisters, leaders, famous people, it's everywhere. It's like everyone has been tarred with this disease, unfortunately. What is hasad? Hasad is, mashallah, very handsome brother here, may Allah preserve him, is that I am envious of his looks and I don't want him to have those good looks anymore. And I may work against that, right? Meaning work against his good looks. Or I'll put actions in place to ensure that he doesn't have those good looks anymore. Or even intend that, or even want that. That's hasad. And the Prophet ﷺ said that hasad does what? It consumes your deeds like fire, essentially. It's a great evil. This is different from envy. So I might say, mashallah, very handsome brother, Allahumma barik, very, very handsome brother, and I make dua for him at night, may Allah preserve him, may Allah protect him, may Allah grant him, 4 righteous wives, and say Ameen. This is Canada, not America, yeah? I thought you'd be a little bit more conservative. Do you know what's really funny? There was more Ameen from the sisters than the brothers. Allahu Akbar, the sisters are on point, Sheikh. I don't know what you're doing, but it's good stuff. Alhamdulillah. I'm just trying to quasi-trigger you just to keep you awake. So, do you see my point? So, as I could be envious in a kind of positive way. So, hasad is like more blameworthy jealousy, where I want what you have and I don't want you to have it, essentially. Okay? The third spiritual disease is riya, ostentation, showing off, doing acts of worship for a reward other than Allah's reward. Doing acts of worship for someone other than Allah. Doing acts of worship for praise from the people, or admiration, or people to hear about that deed, which is another form of ostentation, which has another technical term, but we don't need to confuse the situation. And the Prophet ﷺ described riya as what? The minor shirk. This is if you look at the taxonomy of sins, the worst sin is shirk, right? Then you have minor shirk. Then you have, who knows? Bid'ah. Who said that? Well done, sister. Absolutely. Because some people say, major sins now. No. Bid'ah is worse than the major sin, according to many ulama, the taxonomy of sins, if you like. So innovation, blameworthy innovation, right? So this is a serious matter. And I come from the dawah sphere, right? This is one of our biggest diseases, wallahi. By the way, I can say this with comfort. Number one, I've managed 2 global organizations.
Well,
I've managed some of the biggest du'at in the world. I'm not saying they're like this, but I'm in the sector. And I'm telling you, my default position is, everyone is insincere. Hamza, how can you say that? Well, it includes me as well, don't worry. I tell you why I say this. Here's my dalil. The Salaf, the pious predecessors who were the best generation, they would not consider any of the public actions as accepted. So why should I think you got acceptance just because you got following? What kind of delusional mindset is that? Now, I would not say a specific person's insincere, that would be blameworthy. Because I don't know their context, I don't know their heart. But in general, I think, especially in a social media sense, I'm going towards the side of default position, you're insincere unless you can prove your sincerity. And there's nothing wrong with that. Because this is not like, having a cup of tea. This is Allah's deen. Right? People now, they just, read one book and they go straight to social media. Khalas, I've made it. And we see the journey throughout the decades.
from brother to sheikh.
From brother to sheikh. Or from brother to sheikh to, modernist, or God knows what they turn into. Whatever. Yeah, wallahi, it's crazy. It's insane. And many of our institutions actually have bought into this. I have a phrase, many of us have become algorithm prostitutes. We have prostituted ourselves to the algorithm because we want to submit ourselves to the algorithm. And many of us, including Masajid, have become dawah pimps. Sorry to say. I'm British, I'm abrasive. Yeah? No, but this is a serious matter. Because there are people who come to Masajid and organizations, wallahi, the committee will never let their daughters marry them, and they will never let their sons even emulate that person, but they're only invited because they got some likes and shares. This is utilitarian. This is liberalism. This is a liberal ethic. Come on, am I wrong in this? I've asked this question, by the way. I've been in Masajid and I've said stuff like this. And no one's talking about it. Because everyone's really sensitive. But this is a serious issue. We'll have no barakah in the dawah. You think I'm really concerned about the next 20, 30 years? No, I don't care. I'm talking about the next 1,000 years. Because when I'm dead, I want ajr. I don't want the barakah to be consumed just because, we were Machiavellian, just because we broke principle. Because Allah says the final outcome is the righteous. There's one famous da'i who had, I think, millions of shahadas in Africa, thousands of masajid, and many of them now are like farms. We're not here for the short term, we're here for the long game. And we see this with the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet was the best man to have ever lived. He had a lofty vision. He didn't see his vision. It's actually continuing now. We're part of that legacy. But we're so short-sighted. I want to see results now. But if you're breaking principle to achieve those results, whether it's spiritual or otherwise, you may get the results, but they may not have any weight. And they may go very quickly once you die. Anyway, riyā, ostentation, doing good deeds, acts of worship for other than Allah. The final major disease, which many people actually don't know about, and this is another disease, especially of public speakers, du'at, mashayikh, and even many people living in the liberal culture, because we have this sensation of overpraising each other and giving ourselves, some kind of intrinsic causal effect of with regards to our successes. It's called ujub. Ujub means self-amazement. Many ulama say that it's like arrogance but without a person. Because to be arrogant, you have to reject the truth and think you're better than others. That means you got to reject truth being conveyed to you, so another person, and you need to think that you're better than others, another person. Ujub is the same type of disease but with no one there. Ujub is basically being amazed with your deeds, amazed with your successes, amazed with yourself. And we have this in our liberal culture. Well done! It was all you! Excellent! You're amazing! Tap on the back, right? Because we believe in this positive psychology nonsense, right? That has basically created just weasels and cowards And yani, God knows what is created, with all due respect, yeah? So this self-amazement, basically, if from a principle point of view, if you want to think of it from as a principle, it's thinking you are the creator of the means, not the means. That's what it is, really. For example, I'm a CEO, I wrote a book. Amazing, Hamza Tzortzis, you set up organizations, you travel the world, you got all these, this, that, the other, you wrote a book, and I'm thinking to myself, Hamza, look at you, man. You're smart, Hamza. Hamza Tzortzis, you're not just a pretty face. You're smart. You're smart, you're a good writer, you're eloquent, you're a leader. It's all you. Well done, Hamza. Bravo. That's self-amazement. And he's thinking that I had intrinsic causal effect or causal efficacy. It was because of me solely. This is a spiritual disease that's one of the most difficult. Because you're doing an action, you see the effect of your action. So what happens to you is, okay, well, cause and effect. I'm the cause. And this is a great spiritual disease because you forget that Allah is actually the reason for any type of success that you have. So let's get ready to deal with these diseases, okay? So I started with kibr, and then I ended with ujub. But I'm going to now start with ujub in order to deal with that disease and go back to kibr, all the way back, okay? Clear? So how do you deal with ujub? It's a very difficult one. So I thought about this for a while, spoke to my sheikh. And one key way of dealing with ujub is just to be rational, sound, use your sound aql, your sound intellect, yeah? In order for you to have any success, whether it's grades, whether it's dawah, whether it's anything, wallahi, there needs to have been in place almost an infinite number of variables that you were dependent upon, that you had zero control over. Zero. So you think you did it yourself, you fool. It's so foolish. Just step back. Step outside of yourself, even from your very birth. If your parents weren't alive, you won't be alive. You wouldn't even have life to experience any form of success. And you were born in a particular culture and society that could facilitate your success. There was a particular system in place or a model in place, social, political, economical, in order for you to be brought up, in order to have any form of success. You needed your mother to feed you. You couldn't even wipe your own posterior. And now you think you were catapulted outside of your mother's womb with a briefcase and a tie? If you put a child in a corner of a room, a baby for 2 weeks and don't touch it, it's most likely to die. You were so dependent. Your mother probably went to hospital that's dependent on a medical system. You didn't choose your first school, or you didn't feed yourself for the first year or so. That was all done by other people, external variables outside of your control. In order for those people to function, they had almost an infinite number of external variables that they were dependent upon, that they didn't control. Even the ability to write a book on a computer, you didn't design the computer or develop the algorithm or even have, or develop the system in order to produce these things. You're just part of that society. How many books did you have to read to write a book, for example? Who wrote those books?
Not you.
It's not you. You're standing on the shoulders of other people. When you see it from a macro level, I am telling you, 99.9% had nothing to do with you. If you see it from that macro level. And once you understand there was almost an infinite number of variables outside of your control, in order for you to have any form of success, and all of those variables, including you, are utterly dependent on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you know it wasn't you, it was Allah. It's actually that simple. The reason we think it's us, because we're egocentric. We see it from our perspective. We see it from the first person. We see it through our lenses, our eyes. But Islam teaches us to step outside of ourselves and realize, hold on a second. This has nothing to do with me. Nothing. Yes, your experience is a lot of effort. It may have taken you 3 years to write a book. You probably read 600 books to do that, and so on and so forth. But that's when you zoom in. But you just have one pixel here. When you start looking at the picture, you're thinking, you know what? Oh my God. It wasn't really me. And all of those things I was dependent upon, including myself, are utterly dependent on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So how can I claim that I'm the cause of his success? It's actually simple as that. And also Allah teaches us how to respond to success. Why is it the case that we don't speak about this in the dawah, man? Why do we do this? We have all these fanboys and fangirls, praising man boys, frankly. Yeah, people are not, in my view, real men yet. Yeah, man boys. Because we're just diseased. We should be holding people to account, praising them where necessary, giving constructive feedback when necessary. But we have this kind of neoliberal, capitalist, fan-based system, which is not really Islamic. Imagine the scholars of Islam had fans, or the Salaf had fans. They would probably want to be buried alive, yani. What? I've got fans like this? So, Allah in the 110th chapter reveals that the religion, people are going to be entering into Islam, the folds, masses of people becoming Muslim. What does Allah say to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to do and say? There are 4 main things. It's one of the shortest chapters, you all know this. The 110th chapter. Thank you, sister. Allah says, praise Him. Then Allah says, be grateful to Him. Then Allah says, do istighfar, repent to Allah. Then Allah says that He is the one that we should turn to. These are the 4 things that Allah tells the Prophet ﷺ to do as a result of the success of the deen, the conquest of Mecca, which, if you study the seerah, the Prophet ﷺ was so humbled, he was overwhelmed, where his forehead or his chin was almost touching his riding beast. And he worked harder than all of us. Allah doesn't say congratulations, well done, here's a YouTube plaque, yeah? Here's some accolades, none of that. Allah says to the Prophet ﷺ to praise Allah, to thank Allah, to do istighfar, and to know that Allah is the one that we should turn to and we should return to. Is this clear? If you don't have any of these things in place, it's a sign you have ujub. So you should train yourself, when you have any form of success, praise Allah. If you have any form of success, do istighfar. When you have any form of success, thank Allah. When you have any form of success, know that Allah is the one that we should be returning to. We should do tawbah to. Is this clear? These 4 points. Fake it till you make it. Even if you don't feel it. When you have success, do those 4 things. Because ujub is one of the key diseases of the qalb. Is this clear? So I'm going to give you specific solutions, then give you general at the end as well. Clear so far? Okay, good. So that's dealing with ujub.
So what are the 4 again?
The 4 diseases? Oh yeah, so the 4 diseases are kibr, arrogance, hasad, riya, and ujub. arrogance, blameworthy jealousy, ostentation, showing off, and ujub, self-amazement. So we've dealt with self-amazement. There's more to say, by the way, but we don't have time. You have to sit with the scholars, sit with your mashayikh, you'll have a program, you do tazkiyatun nafs, you work on yourself, you have accountability buddies, and so on and so forth. But this is planting the seed in your heart and mind to take this seriously and keep on working on it. Clear? Okay. So, riya, ostentation, showing off, minor shirk. How do you deal with riya? How do you deal with showing off and ostentation? Number one, understand the consequences of riya. Your deeds are not accepted. They're not accepted, they don't weigh anything. Don't weigh anything, you could go to Jahannam. Simple as that. Your deeds are meaningless, your deeds are void, your deeds have no weight. Number two, understand the consequences of having ikhlas, meaning not having riya. Your deeds are weighty, your deeds are meaningful, your deeds are accepted. You are likely to be enveloped in Allah's mercy forever in Jannah. Number three, know what ikhlas is. Because riya is the opposite of ikhlas. So what is ikhlas? Who knows? What's ikhlas? Sincerity. What does that mean? Who knows what that means? Doing something for the sake of Allah. Okay, what does that mean? You're being sincere to Allah, which is doing it for His sake. But what does that mean? We need to know this. No, you are expecting rewards, but whose rewards? Allah. So ikhlas, the ulama say, is based on three aspects. You have to memorize this. Number one, you're doing the deed because Allah is worthy of it. He's al-ilah, He is the only deity worthy of worship. You're doing it because you love Him. Number two, you're doing it because you want the divine reward. Number three, you're doing it because you want to shield yourself from the punishment from the nar. Everyone does it for all of these three reasons, but some of us are more inclined to one over the other. But the ulama say it's best to do it for all three. You want Allah's divine reward, you're doing it because you love Him, you're doing it because He's worthy of that act, and you're doing it because you want to shield yourself from the nar. Okay? So know what ikhlas is. So you know what goal you have to achieve inside your heart when you're doing a deed. Number four, and this is the advice of Ibn Taymiyyah, may Allah have mercy on him. Do a private act of worship every day that no one knows apart from you and Allah. And this is outside of the fara'id, outside of the obligatory actions. Do a good deed, an act of worship that only you and Allah knows and no one else is going to know. Another strategy to develop ikhlas, counter riya, is to be with people who are sincere. If you're with a mukhlis, you're likely to be a mukhlis. If you're someone who's sincere, you're likely to be sincere. If you're with 5 righteous people, you're likely to be the 6th. If you're 5 imprudent people, you're likely to be the 6th. If you're with 5 rude people, you're likely to be the 6th. We know this from social psychology, and we know this from the Sunnah and the Quran. You are going to be upon the religion of your friends. You're going to be raised with those who you love. If you go to the blacksmith, your clothes are going to get burned. You're going to smell of the blacksmith. If you're going to go to the perfume seller, you're going to smell of perfume. You are your environment.
You are with those who you love.
You are with those who you love. Is this clear? Another point to develop ikhlas, to counter riya, counter ostentation, is to remember death quite often. Because when you realize that you're going to die, it's an inevitability, and the real life is the akhirah, you're akhirah centric, then you're going to be focused in that sense, focused on the akhirah. So your deeds are going to be aligned with that focus. And it does help. You know, sometimes you want to get angry with someone, and the minute you think about the akhirah, you're like, it's not worth it. I have bigger fish to fry. And you could tell when someone's Allah-centric and akhirah-centric. They're like, this is Don't worry about it. Wallah, someone says something about you, khalas, no problem. Maybe they had a bad day, maybe they got traumas, maybe they got their own insecurities. I make dua for them, khalas, leave them alone. Wallahi. I say this dua are in the business of defending themselves a lot, which I find a sign of weakness. I don't know why, I get really angry about it for some reason. I get quite annoyed. Why are you defending yourself? Who the hell are you? Defend Allah and His Messenger. If you're defending yourself more than Allah and His Messenger, then we already have a problem. I gave up defending myself long time ago. Wallahi, I feel so free. I do my thing, khalas. Honestly, it gives you a sense of izzat as well. Like, okay, some guy said something, he said something, that might be right. Thank you. You've improved me. If you did something wrong, okay, thank you. You give me your good deeds. No problem. I mean, it's not a big deal. Focus on the akhirah. Focus on bigger fish to fry. Have lofty goals as a Muslim, yeah? So be akhirah centric. Think about death often, because it will make you realize, and it would realign your life, and also it would fix your deeds with regards to why you're doing them in the first place. There are other general things I'm going to mention, but I'm going to do that at the end, which includes all of the spiritual diseases, which also helps battling riya as well. But these are some things for you to focus on. There's more things to say, but that's enough for now. The other disease is hasad, blameworthy jealousy. I want what he has, and I don't want him to have it. How do we deal with this? Number one, aqeedah. Number one, the deen. Number one, who is Allah? Technically speaking, if you have hasad, you're basically saying, Allah, you got it wrong. That's what you're saying. I was speaking to someone the other day, they felt they had short legs or something, they weren't tall enough. I was like, what kind of stupid attitude is this? What Allah gave it to you, it's the best thing for you. And walk like it's the best thing for you. We have this, unfortunately, amongst the brothers, red pill nonsense, you have to be over 6, whatever, for all that nonsense. Yeah? It's all nonsense. These people are man boys, trust me. Man boys. They don't have character. They don't have courage, moral courage. People who speak like that a lot, it's projections, yeah? It's projections. They have daddy issues or something. Wallah, I believe this. For a majority of them, that's the case. Allah chose it for you, nothing is better for you than what Allah chose for you. Anyway, so say, this brother's handsome, which is true by the way, Allahumma barik. And I'm like, I don't want him to have it though. I want to have what he has. I'm basically saying, Allah, you got it wrong. You should have given it to me, not to him. Think about that. I need to think about how crazy that is. You're saying to Al-Alim, Al-Hakim, the knowing, the wise, the one who has the totality of knowledge and wisdom. We have fragmentary pieces, if that. You're telling him, the powerful, Al-Khaliq, the creator, Al-Khalaq, the perpetually creating, the Rabb. You're telling him you got it wrong, basically. That's what you're doing with your action and your intention and what's in your heart. You're saying, Allah, you got it wrong. Your response to these things should be praising Allah, because Allah's a manifestation of Allah's names and attributes. MashaAllah, look at the guy. MashaAllah, look what Allah has created. Look what Allah has willed. Allahu Akbar. Everything is a kind of theater, a play of Allah's names and attributes. MashaAllah, look how strong he is. MashaAllah, look how shiny her hair is. Oh, MashaAllah, look how big his hands are. Oh, MashaAllah, look how broad his shoulders are. MashaAllah, look how smart he is. MashaAllah, look how righteous he is. Look what Allah is doing. Allahu Akbar. That's how we should be. And we should be happy for the brother and make dua for them. And also the other way of looking at it is, how do you know this is not a test for them? Maybe Allah has saved you from something. I have a kind of theory. The reason Allah didn't make me a multi-millionaire, right? Because it would have been easy for me, because I come from a giving family, so that's one of my excuses why I'm not a millionaire, Sheikh. No, honestly, I even think that about my dad, because my dad's a very giving guy. Like, Allah did not give him a lot of wealth because it wouldn't be a test for him. Or it would have been such a test that maybe there's no chance of guidance for him. May Allah guide him. So you don't know, maybe someone's looks, could give them a lot of insecurities. How many men and women, men as well by the way, they're so beautiful they don't know they're beautiful. Wallahi. They have internal complexes that are unbelievable. Because they were the pretty one in the class and they're probably getting bullied at school because they were pretty, and it just made them feel really ugly. It happens a lot. What a test to have, and it takes years to unpack that trauma, and they will never tell you. So you have to realize not everything could be a blessing, it could be a massive test for them. And maybe Allah saved you from something. And that's why what Allah gave you is the best for you, and what He gave that believer is the best for them as well. But it's a tough test. So a key way of dealing with hasad is to focus on Allah. To not be the believer that is through your actions and your feelings that you're basically saying Allah got it wrong, which is pure kufr. Allah got it all right, and you praise Him for it, and you make dua for your brothers and sisters, and you're happy for them. Another way of dealing with hasad is about identifying. The way to deal with habits and to deal with your changing your personality and having personal transformations is actually to identify as something. So if I've identified that I'm going to follow love, service, leadership of the Prophet ﷺ, all my actions and habits are going to be revolved around that identity. Okay? All of my actions are going to be revolved around that identity. So identify, say, I want to be a good believer. Don't we all want to be good believers? Do we want to be good believers?
Yes.
Well, a good believer that worships Allah loves for the brother what they loves for themselves. Loves for their sister what they love for themselves. And many of the ulama, and Nawawi specifically, said that love is being committed to the well-being, to the goodness and guidance. In actual fact, true love is being dedicated to someone's spiritual development. M. Scott Peck, he wrote this in his book. I think it's called A Road Less Traveled. He says that his definition of love is that you're committed to the spiritual well-being of someone else. Which is very interesting. Because the Sahaba were like that with each other. If you know the story about the prohibition of alcohol, they spat it from their mouths, they poured it down the roads, and when one Sahabi was in the masjid, he was like, what about our brothers who just recently died and they still have alcohol in their stomachs? They were concerned. For us, we wouldn't care. Like, as long as I'm alright. That happens sometimes. We have this shaitan ego thing inside us, isn't it? This individualism, this egocentrism, this arrogance, this hasad. If sometimes you might see, a brother, he didn't come for Fajr. See, I got one over him. Right? It happens. Or sister loosened her hijab a bit. At least I have more haya than her. You know what's really funny? You might be more sinful than her. Because you just become arrogant now. Allahu Akbar. And even the brother who comes to Fajr. Because it might be a sign of riya and kibr. And even ujub as well. All three of the major diseases. Actually 4. All of them. Because hasad as well. Right? So be very careful. You have to be committed to the well-being of your brother. And that's why your nasiha, the way you treat them, should be a manifestation of, I'm committed to the well-being. If you're not committed to the well-being, then you don't love them. So you're not in line with the vision of you wanting to be a good, great believer. This is deep stuff. But this is reality. You want to be a good believer, you need to love each other. One aspect of love is to be committed to the spiritual well-being. To want them to be optimal versions of themselves, and you act in accordance to that. And this is a sign of self-love actually. Al-Ghazali talks about self-love in his Ihya in the 36th volume. He argues that self-love, which is not narcissism is that you think the world is you, you project yourself onto the world and you just end up loving yourself. Self-love is basically wanting good for yourself. And M. Scott Peck talks about this, Eric Fromm talks about this. The closest thing to you is you. It's like a form of self-empathy. If you can't want goodness for yourself, how are you going to want it for others? Just like, how can you give discipline to others when you're not disciplined yourself? So self-love is necessary to love other people. Love for others what you love for yourself. And those who can't love others in that way, you're not committed to their well-being, it's a sign that they don't know how to love themselves properly. So, which disease are we dealing with right now? Hasad, good. So identify with who you want to become, and that would eventually help you revolve your habits and your actions around that identity. Make the decision. I want to be a good believer, and a key aspect of a good believer is to love for others what I love for myself. It's to be committed to the well-being and the goodness and guidance of other people. And that helps with hasad as well. Is this clear? Good. Final one. Kibr, arrogance, rejecting the truth and thinking that you're better than others. Again, just remember who Allah is. I believe that if you study Allah's names and attributes properly, not only you memorize them, but you internalize them and actualize them from a human context, it's going to be very difficult to have these diseases you won't be infected too much by these diseases. For example, Allah is Al-Khaliq, He is the creator of the heavens and the earth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Mutakabbir, the most majestic. So when the ulama or the hadith says those who memorize Allah's names, they will go to Jannah, it doesn't mean memorizing in that kind of a computer sense. It means internalize and actualizing. So how do you actualize Ar-Rahman in your life? Well, you need to become the lovingly merciful from a human perspective as much as possible. How do you actualize Al-Mutakabbir? Allah is the most majestic, if you like. That's not you being arrogant. You do the opposite. It means you're nothing. You become totally humble. So studying Allah's names and attributes and actualize them in your life will actually deal with many of the spiritual diseases, if not all of them. And this is a key spiritual practice of the way of the pious predecessors and the great scholars. Study the names and attributes of Allah in a significant way. Not in a kind of abstract theo-philosophical sense, although that's needed in certain cases, but for the majority of us, just learn them. What do they mean? How do I internalize them? How do I actualize them? Also, dealing with arrogance is that you with humble people. If you're with people who are humble, you're likely to be humble. So make sure you fix your inner circle. Make sure you fix your inner circle. And to deal with all of these diseases, because these diseases are in the qalb, they're in the heart, you need to have a spiritual program that echoes the program of the Prophet ﷺ. Because you just soften your heart or strengthen the spiritual heart. How do you do that? Number one, you have to do your fara'id, do your sunnah prayers, pray in the masjid, pray tahajjud when you can. Make dua in the last third of the night, begging for Allah's forgiveness and mercy. Also, do the dhikr, the afkar in the morning and the evening according to the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. These things are designed to protect your heart, preserve your heart. You need to engage in that program, morning and evening. Pray Fajr, then sit and do your afkar. You pray Asr, then sit and do your afkar. It takes about 15 minutes. You could do it driving, you could do it in the gym. There's no excuse now. Also, another way of dealing with your heart, strengthening your spiritual heart, which helps with all of these diseases, is the recitation of the Quran. It's a shifa. If you do it, even if you don't know the Arabic, although you should know the Arabic, but even if you don't, if you do it with the intention of glorifying Allah, you get the reward. Significantly, this is more important in my view, do tadabbur of the Quran. Allah says, do they not do tadabbur of the Quran, pondering of the Quran, or are there locks on their hearts? You can mirror the meaning. The more pondering you do, the more tadabbur you do of the Quran, the more your heart becomes unlocked to receive His guidance and mercy. Engage in tadabbur of the Quran. It should be in this masjid every day, at least after Fajr. Sorry to say.
We do after Fajr and Isha.
Allahu Akbar. After Fajr and Isha. There you go. And that would soften your heart, strengthen your spiritual heart. You're less likely to have these diseases. So you need to engage in a spiritual program. Do lots of istighfar. If you're not doing this, your heart may just become harder. Everything has a polish. And the polish of the heart is the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Which is interesting, polish. When you polish something, it reflects stuff. You're reflecting the nur, the light of Allah, the guidance of Allah in your life. The other key point is have good friends. And I'll end on this so we could have a discussion and a Q&A. Unfortunately, brothers and sisters, you don't have friends. Sorry to say. You don't have friends. You don't have a friend. You don't have a friend. They're not your friends in the true meaning of the term. Because a friend actually sometimes gets on your nerves. We have a very capitalist, materialistic, utilitarian understanding of friends. I'm going to be his friend because he's cool and he's a means to another ends. I'm going to be his friend because I'm going to get some of his followers. So he's cool for me. You are an instrument. You're a means to an end. You don't have intrinsic value. Most of our friendships are like this. It's so sad, honestly. Your marriage is like this. Forget friendship, your marriage is the same. She's pretty. She's good cook. She's got good lineage. I'm not saying these are blameworthy in particular, but you're using them for an external goal. People to praise you, you know, and if she does anything wrong spiritually, you don't care as long as she stays pretty and stays a good cook, right? Because it's a utilitarian relationship. You're not committed to her well-being. Because you think falling in love is falling in something. That's nonsense. That's Lollywood, Bollywood, Hollywood. Don't get me wrong, you're going to have that feeling. True love, as Eric Fromm and M. Scott Peck allude, is standing for someone. I've made a decision to love you. I'm standing for you. It's not just a feeling. If you're going to rely on a feeling, good night, goodbye, ma salama, your marriage is over. That feeling is going to come and go. It's going to fluctuate. It's going to change. Standing for
you.
I stand for you. I am committed to your well-being. I want you to feel loved. I want you to go to Jannah. I want to receive your love. I want to receive your support. I want you to be committed to my well-being. I want us to have each other's back. You're not just an instrument to an end. You're not a means to an end. You are the ends for the sake of Allah. Because I want you to be in Jannah. But we don't do that with each other. Wallahi, even in the dawah, a lot of the friendships in the dawah are, in my view, are completely fake. I mean, you could tell. Anyone with EQ can tell. This guy and this guy, if they weren't famous, they would not even share a pint of milk together. In actual fact, they would probably be enemies on the street. It's true. Sorry to say. We need to be more mature about this. One of the greatest things that we need to revive, obviously, is family, marriage, but friendship. True companionship. Like the Sahaba, like I mentioned previously. Committed to their well-being. Not only spiritual well-being, but physical well-being. We know the famous story of the Sahaba who were injured in the battle. And one received water, said, no, give it to my brother. And then the other one said, no, give it to my brother. And then they all died. This is love. This is commitment to their physical and spiritual well-being. But we just use each other. Organizations use each other, especially the Muslims one, the most tyrannical in my view. Honestly, we've imported Pakistan tyranny, Bangladesh tyranny, Arab tyranny. All the tyrannies have entered our masajid, our board members, our dawah organizations, the use and the abuse of people. Allah, I believe this. I've seen it. I can say this because I've lived it. I've seen it. I've worn the t-shirt. I took it off. I washed it. I ironed it. I lost color. I'm telling you true. I know my filters are I'm no filter now because I'm tired. Jet lag. But I'm telling you straight, if you don't have someone who's corrected your spirituality in the past 2 weeks, they're not your friend. They're your enemy. Khalas. They're your enemy. Don't think, I can't be her friend now, I'm going to block her. No, you're the same enemy too, because you haven't done that either. So take this as nasiha, that you need to now elevate each other. And this is why the concept for the sake of Allah is so powerful. You're loving someone for the sake of the loving, al-wadud, for the sake of the source of love. And when you love someone for the sake of Allah, that doesn't mean you can't have natural love for them. Of course you can. But loving for the sake of Allah means I'm going to be committed to your well-being, doing what Allah wants me to do to you and say to you and be with you and so on and so forth for His pleasure and His glory, irrespective of what you do to me. So it's not reciprocal. You scratch my back, I scratch your back. For the sake of Allah, that doesn't exist. You can hate on me, you can be this, you can be that, but if I've decided I'm going to love you for the sake of Allah, it doesn't matter how you respond. But one of the beauties of doing that, the barakah, is that you do get a great response as well, because Allah puts barakah in that relationship. But anyway, so you need to have good friends who are committed to your spiritual development. Obviously they shouldn't beat you up about it, and they should follow the sunnah in trying to uplift you. Sometimes we don't know how to do that, right? And they should do it with hikmah. You know, what is hikmah? Having an Allah pleasing goal, and you want to achieve that goal in a particular context, and you apply ilm in that context to achieve the goal. So sometimes saying to someone, don't you know that's haram? It's not going to work, given their context. You may have to follow other strategies. Just like the Prophet ﷺ, when he spoke to the young man who wanted to commit zina, he didn't say, don't you know it's haram? He didn't say that. He said about your mother, your auntie, your sister. Awaken something within him. Then make dua for him. So he understood his context. There was an Allah pleasing goal to elevate this person. What's the context? He's a young man, he has desires. So he used ilm in that context to achieve that particular goal. He could have said, don't you know it's haram? But no, and that's why when people give nasiha, and the way that people give nasiha is a sign that they actually don't care about you. Like, did you really think about how to elevate me optimally? Think about it. Because the way you give nasiha says a lot about you as well. Are you really concerned about their well-being? Ya akhi, I'm just commanding the ma'roof and forbidding the munkar. I'm commanding the good and forbidding the evil. Well, command your evil, command good for yourself first, and forbid evil for yourself first, because your method, your modus operandi, your strategy is totally against the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the first place. Come on. So please be good friends with each other. Make that decision. It's going to be difficult, but you have to do this, because the number one advice that the ulama say of tazkiyatun nafs, if you can't do all of these great spiritual things, is literally being with good people. That's it. That's the number one thing. So if there's anything you got from today, is be with good people. It will change your entire life. I'm supposed to be a leader. I get affected by my surroundings. I do, still. So you have to be, you have to realize shaitan's going to use different strategies to beat you up, to diminish you, spiritually, physically, and otherwise. And you have to be with good people. Okay? So, we went through the 4 spiritual diseases. We gave general advice on how to deal with all of them, and we gave specific advice on how to deal with each one as well. Please, for the sake of Allah, take this very seriously. We're not going to be safe on the Day of Judgment unless we come to Allah with qalbin salim, with a sound heart. And we need to have this as part of our daily practice. Please. May Allah bless you. Jazakallah for listening. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Takbir! 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 Jazakallah khairan, Sadna, so much for that beautiful and amazing talk. So precise, touching on such vital and critical and key points. Jazakallah khairan. Just to touch on that point of like friendship and what that means, even in like linguistically, in Arabic and in English, a friend used to mean somebody even closer than an ally, somebody you could trust at any point in time to have your back because they have the best interest for you. So they'll stand for you, they'll take care of your spiritual care, like all of these things and beyond. They have aql, okay? They know how to have wisdom, and you can rely on them for all of these things and your hereafter. So that's a true friend, right? Like as many of the scholars put. Jazakallah khair for that beautiful reminder. I think we'll open up for Q&A, inshallah. Start with the brother right there. Yeah, okay.
Assalamu alaikum. So I just want to apologize for if the question's already answered in this lecture already. because I did arrive late. But I had to ask, you did touch a bit on like red pill and stuff, so I just had to ask, can you like describe, like it's super confusing nowadays. We saw like how they portray in social media and like all around the world, like the true definition, what's the true definition of being a man. So like I was wondering if you can describe straight from the Sunnah, straight from the source, like what you're supposed to do to be a man. Like, what does it mean by definition to be a man?
Yeah, it's not really related to the topic, but I'll touch on it very quickly. Just general principles. Number one, when you think about masculinity, then the Salaf, the pious predecessors from Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu to Imam Shafi and so on and so forth, they said essentially masculinity is your deen, masculinity is your character. Simple as that. All this silly philosophies, ideologies, that's nonsense. It's your character. And whose character must you emulate? Whose character must you emulate? The Prophet ﷺ. That's it. Simple as that. So if someone tells you something that's not in line with the Sunnah, then reject it. It's just that simple. Like, when you had these red pillars who were talking about, women with children and the way they would look down on them. This is nonsense. Or older women. Of course, in our tradition, we have advice about getting married early and the advice of marrying virgins. Of course, but when you see the deen holistically, you can't publicly condemn people just because of their context and their situation and look down on them. This is so blameworthy and haram. The point is, follow the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And that means courage. That means generosity. That means forbearance. That means, being humble, being shy. And with all due respect, some of these red pillars and other ideologies, if they were to look at the Prophet ﷺ, they would accuse him of not being a man, which would be utter kufr, because they have these ridiculous notions of what it means to be a man. For example, they say, my wife disrespected me, no way, that's it, divorce. Or I'm going to go on a sex fast, some of the advice. I won't touch her for so long, just because she rolled her eyes or something, yeah? It's nonsense.
To do bihar, a major sin effectively, right?
It's nonsense. Yeah. What did Aisha do, radiallahu anha? She broke a plate in front of the Prophet ﷺ because she was a little bit jealous. Look how he responded. So the point is, we just have to follow the sunnah. There's more to say about masculinity, how to develop courage, how to develop forbearance, how to be a qawam, how to lead at home, how to provide for your family, how to have a masculine frame. Like you have your red lines, and within the red lines you have forbearance, love, mercy. But if your red lines are crossed and you have to enforce them, how do you enforce them? What are the red lines? For some people, everything is a red line. Right? But you have basic red lines from the Quran and Sunnah. Anything within it, you forbear, you love, you overlook.
A good term the scholars use here is talaffuq, to intentionally not look at it.
Absolutely.
So they say this is a key to all relationships, but particularly to marriage, is just act like you didn't even hear.
Allahu Akbar. So these things, we could unpack another time, but in a nutshell, it's your character. The Salaf said, your masculinity is your character. Whose character must you follow or emulate? The Prophet ﷺ. Anything against that is blameworthy by definition. It's simple as that. We can't go into all aspects of masculinity. We'll be here all day. But that's for another time. And there are many good brothers who are working on this from a Quran and Sunnah perspective, and you should follow them and read their work, inshallah. Jazakallah khair.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakallah for an amazing session today. My question is, your statement, the closing statement where you said that the people you are with, they influence you the most. So spiritually, if you know that the people you are with are not a good influence on you, but at the same time you want to help them come on the right path, so you can't then shut them down, right? So you have to be with them as long as it takes to bring them on the path of Allah. So how that will help? I mean, how do we get away from what they are influencing us with, at the same time trying to bring them on the path of Allah? So it's a very tough thing to do for a normal human being. What do you suggest on that?
Yeah, that's a very tough question. I don't even really know how to answer it, because every situation has its own individual context and its specific needs and specific context. So I can't give you a specific answer. As a general principle, if that relationship is actually really damaging to your iman, then you should try and not engage in that relationship, whether it's a friend or otherwise. Also, one way to strengthen your relation with that person from the perspective of helping you and helping them is just to give them dawah. Just give them dawah. Your relationship now should be one of dawah. So contexts change. Contexts there are variables that I'm not aware of people's situations. It could be the case that the best thing to do is to literally move away. That could be the case, because your context of your level of iman, your kind of interpersonal skills, or your maturity at this stage of your life is not sufficient enough to actually keep you on a very basic spiritual level. And this friendship or this circle is damaging you to the degree that you'd be going onto the path of Jahannam. In that context, you need to go, right? But there are other subtleties. It might be the case that, you're doing all right, but they affect you sometimes in some way. And if you change your strategy by instead of you having them as just normal friends, start giving them dawah or taking them to places where would facilitate their positive influence, then maybe you should explore that. But you have to, first and foremost, save yourself from the hellfire. Yeah? So you understand your context best, you understand the variables best, and just play that chess game and understand, okay, if I do this, what would happen? What's the likelihood? So the general principle when it comes to these things is look at the probability. If staying in that relation, whether it's friendship or otherwise, is highly likely that it's going to diminish your iman to the degree that you're on the verge of hellfire, then you shouldn't be thinking of any other strategy other than getting out. But if the probability is not that high, but there is some form of negative effect, but you believe you may have certain skills and qualities or abilities to basically improve that situation through da'wah, then just reframe the relationship as a da'wah relationship, right? And there are so many other factors involved, but as I said, don't take these answers on this particular topic too seriously, because it's a very difficult one to actually solve. Because I'm living that situation as well. There's people around me that are like, man, I need to sort this guy out, and he's really like draining me, and I feel like smashing his head on a wall. What am I going to do? Yeah? So I'm in that situation too.
There's a term that comes to mind here within Tazkiyah that's spoken of is being the stranger, ghurba, right? And فَطُوبَى الْغُرَبَى. So Islam started off as a strange thing. It'll go back to being one. Glad tidings, or a tree in Jannah, is for those who is a stranger. Strangeness over here is defined by a lack of those who can assist you in particular acts of worship. So this can differ from act to act, from notion to notion. For some people, that's like a lack of like support from people for getting married early. For others, it's fasting. For others, it's piety or humility. For others, it's other such things. So you being a stranger is not necessarily a status of worship, but rather it's an effect of seeking sincerity from God, where you will end up being a stranger in certain circumstances. So when you are with such people, think of yourself as that stranger trying to give the water of Islam to these people, right? But then at the same time, you can't always be a stranger, else you're going to feel isolated. So in other areas, you need to find people who are with you. So it's difficult, it's not easy, but it depends on where you're at and all the good stuff that sometimes I have to say. I think we'll take one last question, inshallah, and we'll finish up. Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum. So we talked about identifying the diseases as well as how to remedy them, but I feel one of the most difficult things can be actually identifying them within ourselves. I assume it takes a level of active reflection, but the difficult part about it is usually they come up very occultly, flying under the radar, and so the question is, do you have any advice or suggestions on how to go about actively reflecting or identifying those diseases within our own hearts?
Yeah, that's a very good one. I mean, one way of identifying the diseases is first knowing what they are. because you're able to make distinctions now, right? So that's the first step. The second step is ask people. I know that's very difficult, but you need to ask them, because to be is to be related, right? What is a personality on a desert island with no one there? It doesn't mean anything because there's no one to relate to. So you really learn yourself through your relations. You reveal yourself through your relationships. And you just basically need to have authentic relationships where they can actually say those things to you. Like, honestly, people say things about me that I don't believe. I don't see it, I'm sorry to say. But I take it seriously. Because I know I'm within my own kind of egocentric bubble, right? Because that's like the egocentric paradox, isn't it? That the only way you see things is really you, through you. Right? Because all knowledge really in reality is self-knowledge. Because you are the filter in which knowledge goes through. So, and it could be skewed in some way. And you know, the way you relate with different people, they'll explain certain things to you. And then it will make you think, okay, that's very interesting, I need to work on that. Or maybe, like one brother said to me, and I respect him and love him a lot, he said, I have an inferiority complex. Would you believe it? Would you believe it? He made me think about that, you know. I used to think it was humility. He said, no bro, you have an inferiority complex. Yeah. Then I spoke to my wife about it and she kind of agreed. But she said, good, keep it, I'd rather you have that. But basically that's what she said. And you know, that wanted to make me realize, you know, where is that coming from? You know? Now that's not really directly related to spiritual disease per se, or it could be, but I'm just saying you need to ask people, and that means you have to have good friends around you, that you have that authentic relationship where you commit to each other's well-being, or you have a mentor. Where is your sheikh? You know, forget what color is your Bugatti, what color is your sheikh? Or where is your sheikh, right? That should be the big question. Do you have a mentor? Do you have an older brother? Do you have someone who's gone through that spiritual program that can advise you? This is important. You know, a student of knowledge or someone who's spiritually mature, that can be, men need mentors, men need guidance, you know, women need that too. And that's going to help you, and they would have the insights to reveal things within yourself that you didn't realize in the first place. You know, I remember my dad when I was growing up, he was so adamant on us not showing off. Showing off is bad for you. No showing off, no showing off. I remember even when we were praised at school, my dad would just like bring me down the stairs and be very humble, say thank you very much. The teacher would be saying great things about me, but he would just literally walk out. He had that thing about, you know, arrogance and showing off. And, so have good people around you, ask them. I mean, we should do that. It's a very difficult exercise. But do it. If it's with love and they do it in the right way, you'll find so much about yourself. And that would just basically create awakenings, thinking, wow, I actually didn't realize that. Yeah, I do come across quite abrasive. Yeah, I should be more sensitive to the Canadian urf. Yes, I do sound like an arrogant Brit. And I don't give a damn. I'm joking. I'm only kidding. But do you see my point? I remember, I give you a story. Once, Abdurrahim Green, may Allah bless him, we had this leadership thing that we were doing, or this team building, years ago, in the beginning days of I-Era. And he did this experiment about, we had to be put in groups, and we had newspaper and sellotape, and whoever could build the tallest structure that could balance a mobile phone, they win. But in the process, he would whisper things in people's ears, and they had to follow the instruction. And to cut a long story short, he basically disabled many people in the team. He said, one person, you can't speak anymore. One person, lie down on the floor. One person, put your hands behind your back. One person, close your eyes all the time. And, you know, say a team won, it was so much excitement. And then the thing that he gave to us, the nasiha at the end, it changed me. Because what he said is, look what you guys did. You guys didn't care about the disabled people in your group. If they weren't functioning anymore, you didn't make no effort to bring them back involved. You just cared about that materialistic goal. You didn't care about your team or the people, the empowerment, or their facilitation, or working together, or re-enabling them because they were disabled. And that really hurt me, because I thought I identified myself as a compassionate guy coming from a compassionate family. And that's why identity is very important. That awakened something within me, and I started to live a life that I would try and recognize people who are maybe quieter, or they may have certain skills that no one knows of yet, and try to push them forward. And that helped develop my personality. That was like maybe a macro example of what a friend should do. Yeah? So that's a really good example, that these kind of things reveal who you are and where you should be. But that is also predicated upon the fact that you should identify with who you want to become in the first place. Yeah? So you need to first make up your mind and say, I'm not, and this, by the way, I forgot to mention, this is such a powerful tool that I've used. And we'll end on this. Such a powerful tool for your own self-development from a tazkiyatun nafs perspective. Identify as a pious person. Don't claim you're a pious person. Identify. I am not a person of kibr. I am not a person of hasad. I refuse. I am not a person of ostentation. I am not a person of riyah. I am not a person of ujub. Identify as someone who is righteous. Don't claim to be righteous, but aspire and identify that way. When hasad comes, you know it's not you. It's come from your lower self. It may have come from shaitan, but don't identify with it. The reason they get consumed with arrogance and with hasad and with ujub and riyah is because they think this feeling has come from within me, so it must be me, so I am going to be it. No. The distinction to be made is this: it's come from the lower self or from shaitan. Refuse to identify, then put actions in place to go against it. I had to do it. I was thrown in leadership positions. I was like, no man, I'm still competing with this guy. I ain't leading him to bring him up. I want to be up. So, but then I realized, Hamza, you don't want to identify yourself as that weak spiritual thing. So I would have the feeling, but then I'll do actions against it. For example, I'll make dua and sajda for them that they become better than me. I'll act in that way as well. In the beginning it was hard, but I'm telling you that Allah made it easy. Allah made it, wallahi, Allah made it more natural. And that's why it's a struggle, it's a spiritual struggle. And even now, in leadership positions, sometimes I get those inklings, but now I know how to deal with it. I've won a few battles. They were very hard, but you win a few battles and you have the tools in place to like, okay, that's shaitan, that's from my lower self. I know exactly what I need to do. Right, I'm going to share this post of his now. I'm going to make dua for him. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to big him up. Bam, 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 bam. Boom, it's gone. Move on. Yeah? So don't identify with it. Know that it comes from the lower self of shaitan. And put actions in place, even if you don't feel them immediately. And over time, you'll be able to deal with that particular hasad or whatever the case may be. Yeah? And Allah knows best. Jazakallah khair. Jazakallah for your time. Allah bless every single one of you. Keep you united and strong, and respect your mashayikh and your elders. Looks like it's a great community. Most of you have stayed way after Isha. That's fantastic news. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakallah khair. May Allah accept it from you as well, inshallah. Jazakallah khair everyone for coming out. There are refreshments that are being served in the gymnasium. You can go on there, inshallah, and enjoy some refreshments. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.